family and friends, they will not be disappointed. But let's get it popping.
Pull up in motorcades. I got a show today. It's all I'm trying to do. Hustle and motivate. Choppers to throw away. Hustle the overweight. That's why they follow me, huh? They think I know the way. Cause I took control of things. Ballin' the solo way. And if you pattern my trend, I make you my protege. Crossing that soldier race. Niggas don't know them days. Take you in back of the buildings. Make you expose your rage. Take you across the tracks. Make you explode the face. Now you official now. But you got a soul to say. I just been cooking that new. I'm about to drop in the few. Think if I call it the great, the people gon' call it the truth. I ain't really trip on the credit. I just paid all of my dues. I just respected the game. Now my name all in the news. Tripping on all of my moves. Quote me on this, got a lot more to prove. Remember I came in this bitch, fresh out the county with nothing to lose.
Don't do this for nothing, no. On the ground, you. But I don't do this shit for nothing. No, not at all. You. But my money real, that you do. Oh, yeah. So I don't do this shit for nothing.
Rolling up some good, going up till we get faded. You know how we do it. Everybody take a flex on me. I got the keys to the city. I don't need no limousine. I turn up when I pull up and tell my booking agent book a show. Running around with the paper bag, running around with the paper bag. Going crazy spending all this cash. Going crazy spending all this cash. If I spend it, I'ma get it back. Even when I ride around dirty, a nigga don't need a seatbelt. A nigga don't need a seatbelt. Nah, it don't cost to keep it real. Run up, get down up. Shit can get real. Fuck around and get your ass right. Nigga, fuck around and take your shit. Got you asking God why. Drag your ass into an alley. Pull out aim for the target. Should've never been around the killers. In my town, we the fucking realest. No cheddar bobs round here. I get the spray and they gon' get down. Ski mask over my face. Catch a body in broad day. Catch a body in broad day.
I got the key to the city. I got a hold of Shadiddy. Talk to that bitch in Swahili. Tattoo my name in graffiti. Whack out your hood in graffiti. Come through your hood on the weekly. None of y'all niggas can't see me. None of y'all niggas can't see me. Y'all ain't got nothing like this over there. Bunch of frontline millionaires. Bunch of self-made at the Trump pay. Guess the odds really took it there. Any problem, I'ma reappear. With a squad you already fear. All this time I've been playing fair. 7 digits every single year. Niggas die, niggas disappear. Alibis, I was really there. Life a crime till I get the chair. Columbine in my trigger hair. Still I rise and I took the stairs. Feel a fire, it's a different glare. All these fights, it was never fair. Busting knuckles, still I'm swinging fears. Taste the salt inside my dripping tears. You should know I never had a fear. You should know I never had a shot, never had a chance till I took it here. Man, it's proud, but I see it clear. Strategize, I'm an engineer. Pick a side, gotta keep it there. Switching up, nigga, looking weird. I got the key to the city. I got a hold of Shadiddy. Talk to that bitch in Swahili. Tattoo my name in graffiti. Whack out your hood in graffiti. Come through your hood on the weekly. None of y'all niggas can't see me. None of y'all niggas can't see me.
What's good, everybody? Welcome to the Pull Up Show. I'm your host, Mr. BJ Matthews, aka B. Just before we get started, follow us on the YouTube page, the Pull Up Basketball Podcast. Like, share, subscribe, all of our YouTube videos. Hit that like button for y'all enter this house. Make sure y'all wipe y'all feet. Also, hit the share, subscribe. If you guys do not have the Cash App, make sure you guys look at the screen right here. Cash App, $ BJ Matthews, $ BJ Matthews for all this great content that we drop to y'all on a daily, weekly, monthly, yearly basis. We definitely appreciate the support that y'all give to us through the Pull Up Basketball Podcast. Also, if you guys have your membership badges that are available as well, you guys have an option of getting the Pull Up badge, LA Clipper badge, or the interview badge. As y'all can see right here on the screen, the Pull Up Basketball members right here at the bottom of the screen. Those are the people that have the perks of being a Pull Up Basketball badge member. We are in the summertime. We are back in it with LA Clipper business. We're talking about the playoffs as well, but with the playoffs starting with the finals tomorrow, we have another interview coming right now, as well as more in the future. But we got, another guest. Really wouldn't be called a special guest because he's back for the third time. One of our favorite guests that we have LA Clippers. Got a chance to, work with him side by side this year for the first time, man. It was great seeing him. Didn't know he was as tall as he was when I first approached him. But I got my dog, Mr. Law Murray, in the building, man. What's good, Law?
What's good, man? It's good to have an off season for those who have all seasons, but as you know, I don't really have much of an off season. So yeah, let's talk about this basketball team that we've been watching.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Before we do, let's go and shout out the people in the comment section. If you guys have not already, hit that like button. Like I said, shout out to my man Thomas Talented, said Real Clippers Insider, my man Law Murray. Shout out to Miss Cloud Prodigy. Appreciate you coming in, Mercedes. Thank you for that. Tune Sports, Cleveland Cavaliers fan. Go follow his page as well as a content creator. Salute to you, my guy. Salute to Clip Gang TV. Let's go Clippers. And let me give a few more shout outs. Let's see. Said salute to the Pull Up fam. All right. So if y'all come in here, make sure you guys, like I said, hit the like button. We got like 20 people in here. We should have over 20 likes right now to get the people rolling in. But Law, before we get into anything basketball wise, how are you doing? Season's over for us. How are you doing?
I feel good. I've gotten a chance to. I'm taking a week off from working out just because my body's like telling me, "Hey, man, you're about to have a long summer ahead," and just trying to make sure I got that together. But I feel blessed to just be healthy and active and get a relative amount of time away, get some rest, if you will. Even though I've been locked into all the playoff series that have gone on. I'm ready to watch these finals. Look forward to summer hoops, whether it's the Drew or the W or next month, you got Summer League. So I want to just keep my mind fresh for all that. So I feel like my balance has been good, and that's how I'm feeling. I don't get that question a lot, so it's a slightly longer answer for you.
And see, for y'all that don't know, that Law is actually a hooper as well. And you said the Drew, so is it you in the Drew this year, or you?
I'm definitely not playing. There ain't enough teams for me to be out there, out there playing. But I will say this: I got to see all 20 of those teams play, and I mean, I feel like when people talk about they hoop, it's like, oh, they're going to just shake and bake everybody. Or it's like, I've never played like that. So given that, besides that, it's like I could probably play at the Drew. But am I playing at the Drew? No, I'm there to watch, and I'm there to people watch, if you know what I mean.
I love it. All right, well, let's just get into Clipper business. That's what we're going to definitely talk about. But one thing, can you kind of tell the people for the Clipper recap for this season? How did you take it this year as far as, the previous years that you've covered the team? Explain this year in one word. I'm going to let you kind of go with that. Explain this year in one word and evaluate off of that.
Incomplete. Only get one word. That's the word I got to go with.
Incomplete. Okay. Why?
I felt like the team showed a lot and they got through a lot. And it's this year more than the previous years. It was just really disheartening that once again they couldn't get to, but especially through a playoff series with the team that they showed that they could be for a significant period of time this past winter. I think that their approach that they took, it was great initially. It was disrupted, and then it was powerful once they figured out the team that they were post trade. And then, of course, they hit a wall, but they just couldn't quite get the guys that led them to be those guys in the playoffs. And this was a good year to have your full team. I look at how the playoffs have went, and it's like, I mean, no disrespect to the Dallas Mavericks, but I feel like the Clippers matched up well with them. If they had either their full group or if guys played up to their capabilities. And unfortunately, neither one of those things happened, and it was still a long series. So
Yeah.
incomplete, but this was also a bad time to be incomplete. This was
Mhm.
a year going in where I felt like it needed to happen this year, or um, we had to move on from this idea that this team had a championship window going forward. And I'm pretty resolute in how I look at the team. Like, I don't throw the contender thing out there lightly. Like, you ask some people, they'll have like a dozen teams that they can say is a
Mhm.
contender. I don't really play that, man. Like, you got to really be a top 5 team to me, and contend. And yeah, I think the window's closed, but that's not necessarily a criticism of how this year went. I thought that they took a damn good shot and just did not have the personnel needed to not just advance past the Mavericks, but to show that they were still worthy of being contenders in the West.
Mhm. Yeah, and like you said, we've got LA Clipper beat right along Murray in the building. If you guys have not already, make sure y'all smash that like button. Giving us some Clipper insider information off the transparent of the season. So you basically said it. This was a bad time not to have your full team. Obviously, Kawhi went down, and we're going to talk a little bit about that as the show continues. But let's talk about the beginning of the season. Obviously, the Harden trade happened within 5 games of the season, I believe. And we started off on a bumpy start. I think we lost our first 5 games, and then we finally beat Houston in that in-season tournament game when we hit that game-winning shot. Let's talk about the 26-5 run, where the Clippers looked like they were the best team in the league. What was going in your head? And did you take it at that time they were a contender, or you were still holding back saying, let's see what happens in the postseason?
There's no, I don't think that you can look at the regular season and just wait and be like, oh, let's see what happens in the playoffs. The playoffs are the playoffs. What you do in the regular season gives you your profile of what kind of team you could be in the playoffs. But I never, I don't like looking at teams and being like, well, they might fail in the playoffs. I mean, look, 15 teams are going to make the playoffs but not win a championship. And then you see what people do to teams that win the championship. They try and find reasons to invalidate their accomplishments. So I try and keep that perspective even in the regular season, even before seasons even begin. And them being 26-5, I thought 2 things. 1, they can beat anybody. And 2, if there's one thing that is a concern, it's do they defend well enough to be truly a great team? And we saw that part in flashes. We saw that they could probably use one more guy, but how do you get that guy? And is that guy even available out there to get? I think the team, even when they were playing their best basketball, was very aware of the things that might wind up being their shortcomings. Like, that was apparent from the coaching staff, the star players, the role players, as well as the front office. So we had all those conversations. You notice that it's 26-5 because what's the cutoff when they got back from the Grammy trip? And they were basically a 500 team after that.
Mm-hmm.
It was the Grammy trip was, the same week as the trade deadline. And
Mm-hmm.
so the team just wasn't quite the same. They absolutely peaked too early. But but when you show you're that good over an extended period of time, it is significant. Like the Dallas Mavericks, they're in the finals right now, and their peak was when they went 16-2, shortly after the first week of March, going into when they clinched everything they could clinch. Like,
Mm-hmm.
that's a 18-game peak. That is much shorter, almost half the games that the Clippers showed when they were at their best. Like, the Clippers being that good for that long, it showed that the team that they put together was the right team to put together. And you just want that team to get to the spring. That's
Mm-hmm.
it. So the whole time I was looking, it was like they were beating the crap out of teams. They went to
Yeah.
New Orleans and they absolutely dominated them. They went to Boston the second night of a back-to-back to start that Grammy trip, and they dominated them. They
Indiana.
I mean, shit. Yeah, you had the Snow Angels in Indiana, a team that maybe people didn't think that much of in December because Indiana hadn't been in the playoffs in years. But that Indiana team wound up getting to the conference finals, and I don't want to hear no asterisk BS when it comes to that. Like they
Mhm.
earned their opportunity to get to the playoffs and win games. Like that's like at the end of the day, I care about the five guys that are on the floor and playing the game, not the guys who aren't on the floor. Like I will consider that, but it's about who's playing, and they beat a legitimately good Indiana team.
Yeah,
Now, of course, as a way of showing like how things went this season, that same Indiana team upgraded, came back to LA, and handed out a beating so bad that Teron Lue had to call the team soft.
yeah,
You know what
yeah,
I
yeah,
mean? Like guys
yeah,
were struggling with identity and not sure what they were shaking. They were
yeah,
shaking. But what was impressive to me, as impressive as the 26-5 run was, the team that showed me that, oh my goodness, just get to the damn playoffs. Get these guys to play in April. They got over their malaise because they won 7 out of 8, right after that Pacers game in late March where they lost at home. So that was the team that, I mean, 26-5 is what a lot of people are going to talk about and remember. And that length of time of being as good as they were, that's what was their peak. But
yeah,
the fact that they showed that they could win those 7 out of 8 games directly after struggling as much as they did for most of March, that was just as significant. Unfortunately, one of the parts of that run was the fact that Kawhi's knee flared up. They never got Kawhi back after that, and that's why it feels incomplete, because everyone's going to want to point the finger at the end of a season. It's like, well, it shouldn't be about one person. It's a factor. It's Kawhi's injury.
yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. And speaking of which, the 26-5 run, like you said, the Grammy trip happened after I think that game in Atlanta targeted it
That was
off.
the last game of it. Yep.
Yeah, and so what you you in the locker rooms, you're one of the main, beat writers of the team, if not the biggest one you enjoy. Was the wall that did they hit a wall after the post game All-Star break? Was it this the 82 game season where it was the injuries because PG went through an injury in March? Was it guys disgruntled? Like what was kind of your aura about what happened right after that All-Star break? Like what went wrong for them to start, falling apart?
It wasn't the All-Star break, that's for sure, because they had issues before the All-Star break. I mean, you had two guys who needed to get sent home, before the last game of the All-Star break because they didn't get traded. Like that to me was crazy. That to me was a red flag.
PJ and
That
Bones, right?
right. Like that to me was a bigger concern for me as far as what the team thought that they were capable of doing, more than anything that had to do with like wins and losses. Like that was an issue. So I don't even want to, tag it to the All-Star break. I feel like they played their ass off on that Grammy trip. They won 6 out of 7 games out of time zone. That is hard. And then they came immediately back and they got smacked by the Pelicans because they always get smacked in the first game after the All-Star break. Like that's a hard.
Yeah,
I mean, not All-Star break, the Grammy trip, first game back after
right,
the Grammy trip. Like
right.
that's always a really hard game for them. Like you get, one day off in between your last game. They had a back-to-back to end their Grammy trip and to start it. Like it was exhausting. I just feel like they peaked early. Teams understood how they needed to play the Clippers. I feel like bodies were starting to break down. All those bodies broke down. James was not nearly as good after the Grammy trip as he was for most of December and January. Paul, he needed to miss time towards the end of February. I think that annoyed Tyronn Lue a little bit. But that happens every year with Paul George. Every year around February, Paul's body's just not fresh, and he just goes through a slump. So we noticed that Kawhi, I think Kawhi only scored 30 points once after the Grammy trip for the rest of the season. I'm not even looking at it. That's just what I feel like I've seen from when I was looked at how Kawhi's season was going. And then we all know what happened to Russ. Like before he broke his hand, things were just it just looked like things were a little unstable with his role and how he was playing. And then obviously he got hurt at the worst possible time to get hurt. I mean, the only thing that it probably helped him with is that it enabled him to take a step back. It enabled him to get rest that maybe people say he didn't need, but like, it also gave a chance for guys who were whining about playing time to actually get playing time and show if they were worthy of it or not. So I just feel like there were a lot of things happening with the team, both on the floor, physically and otherwise, intangible wise, where they broke down. I think they played teams that were like, we're just going to play y'all differently. We see how good y'all been. We've been watching y'all play. If a team plays that well for that long, eventually teams be like, all right, we're just going to run it at them. We're going to see if they just keep up. A lot of the losses after the Grammy trip, they had a few too many losses where they had significant leads. The Clippers had significant leads, and they just, didn't have enough in the tank. Like I can think of the Lakers game where that was like that. The Timberwolves game where Kawhi leaves in the middle of the game, and they were up 20 and wound up being down by 20. The game in Milwaukee, huge win in Minnesota, emotional win in Minnesota. The day before that, and then they get to Milwaukee, they go up against a Bucks team missing Giannis, but Dame was unstoppable. They ran out of gas in that game. Like guys got tired in that game. The Clippers weren't deep this year, which was a good thing initially, because last year they were too deep. They had guys like Robert Covington who couldn't stay on the floor. There was just too many. There's just too many guys at the same positions. The roster wasn't ideally balanced. And then this year, they traded a lot of that depth to get James. They tried PJ. PJ was a liability any way you look at it. They had Mason Plumlee get hurt. They had to use a roster spot on Daniel Tice, a guy who, it would have been nice if Musa could show that he could be a rotation player. He showed that he wasn't ready for that. They did what they had to do to get through the season, to get over 500, because they were under 500 when November ended, and that's a long run to be playing hard as hell, to secure what they need to secure. Like you saw how the Western Conference was this year. Like they needed to play heavy minutes, to play hard, to play well, to simply secure their positioning in a Western Conference where if they won 44 games this year like they did the year before, they wouldn't have even made the play-in tournament. I think that was exhausting, and the schedule eventually spoke to that.
And see, that's why. So you said it. We weren't deep, and we had too many guys at the same position with Morris, Rocco, and Batum. Why? I don't understand why Ty Lue does not trust the youth enough. I don't know if you see that, but he will not. Boston, Bones, Kobe played a little bit during the beginning of the season, but he has this habit of mostly trusting the older players. So what is it with him and just not playing the youth more? I think that can kind of keep the older players a little bit more fresh. I think Kawhi, PG, and Harden be like, "Yo, hey, I'll get a night off because it's 82 games in a season."
I can tell you that. I can tell you that's not a conversation those dudes were having. Not at all. I think I think a lot of the fan base overrates the talent. I don't even want to say overrated, because I mean, whose ratings are we talking about? Like, I don't want to compare other people's evaluations and say that that they're not properly in place. But I do think there's a lot of guys who, just because they're young players on the Clippers, they're like, hey, they can do something. And it's like, I can go list by list here. I mean, I already talked about Musa. Musa got a great opportunity to show that he could be a rotation player when Mason Plumlee sprained his MCL in New York. I thought Mason was going to be out significantly longer than he wound up being, and he probably came back early. But I thought that Musa got a chance for about a week or so, and it was very clear. It was so clear that Daniel Tice was signed basically off the street, and the Clippers started winning. Like, Tice's first game with the Clippers was James Harden's first win with the Clippers against the Rockets. Like, so that was an example there where it's like, well, we gave a young player an opportunity to get run. It absolutely something needed to happen, and there you go. Kobe Brown's another example. PJ was a player by the end of November. The coaching staff decided that Kobe Brown deserved a shot, and he got a shot. And moreover, PJ Tucker was immediately upset with that. They probably would have benched PJ Tucker a week or so before that, but PJ, you know, he caused a scene, and they kept playing him for the rest of November. But like by the time they got to Sacramento for that last back-to-back of November, Kobe Brown got his opportunity, and a lot of people were excited about Kobe Brown getting the opportunity. What Kobe Brown showed was, as good and as mature his game is and can be offensively, he wasn't shooting it that well. But the biggest issue was he was much more likely to foul you than he was to grab a defensive rebound. Like, that was a real concern. But Kobe didn't lose his spot immediately. You know, they were going to keep playing Kobe. But Paul George, when he missed his first game in December against the Sacramento Kings, which, again, they're in the middle of what would be a 9-game win streak. So Paul misses time, and they're like, hey, we're going to miss Paul. Actually, he didn't finish the Kings game and wound up missing the Golden State game. So the guy who wound up playing in that spot was Amir Coffey. And we all know Amir's, you know, journey to get to this point. You know, undrafted, 2-way contract, got promoted, bulked up way too much and didn't play well his first year coming in on a standard deal. And this year he was not in anyone's plans, right? He was a third stringer. But he got to play in Paul George's place. And because Amir played so well, and it's like Daniel Tice. Daniel Tice played so well, it's like, we're going to keep playing Daniel. Amir played so well that it's like, we start PG and Kawhi at the 3-4. Like, Amir fits and is playing well. And it's like, if you're going to have a rotation, you're going to play Amir, who's playing well, and you're going to have Kobe develop more in the G. You're going to get him more reps because he clearly needs the reps, but clearly is not exactly ready to play at that level just yet. It's fine. I know everyone's looking at how old he is. He's a rookie. So those are two spots right there. Your backup 3-4 and your backup 5. Your other backup spots is literally Russell Westbrook and Norman Powell. In a 9-man rotation, you're basically saying, like, and again, they went 26-5. You're not exactly looking and be like, man, like, how much better? It's like, no, they were really good. So now when you get to Bones, you're behind 4 guards, and all those guys were healthy, you know, by the middle of November 1, once Terrence Mann got back from his ankle sprain. There's nowhere to play, you know, like they tried to be stubborn. They tried to have Bones Highland still in the rotation and start Russ and start James and have Norm and then bring Terrence Mann back and be like, yeah, we can play all. And no, it didn't work. And it's not Bones' fault per se. It's just that you got a pecking order, and those guys for the most part were healthy. That pecking order didn't open up until Russ broke his hand. And then you get Brandon, and just the last point here, because, you know, we're talking about the young guys. These are the young guys, right? Brandon was going to get every opportunity to play. When I was in Hawaii in October, he played in the first quarter of the first preseason game, and that was a sign of how much they wanted to push and give him an opportunity to play. Like, again, we're talking about why wasn't T. Lue? Like, it's a narrative that I'm doing my best to address it. And so they thought so highly of Brandon that he wasn't even on the summer league team last year because he graduated out of that, which is something that Jason Preston didn't do. It's something that, you know, obviously the rookies had to play. Moussa Diabate, you know, it's like, nah, Brandon, you graduated out of that, right? Yeah. And so Brandon was going to have an opportunity, but because he was dealing with quadricep tendinopathy and he messed that up while he was in training camp, Brandon never got healthy again until the first week of December. Well, what was happening in the first week of December? Once again, the Clippers found their rotation, found a way to win, and ran with that for more than 2 months. So at that point, your Brandon is like, you're behind. And when Brandon got few opportunities to play, he was up and down. So I know people are like, what if guys just sat out? And it's like, the state of the West was not, hey, let's develop young guys. It was win as much as possible so you're not in the play-in tournament. And we're talking about guys who, do they have a little bit of something? Sure. Are they guys who it's like you should be like, man, they should play more? None of those guys showed that. not while I was playing, and certainly not my reaction by the end of the season.
So you don't think Bones showed that any part of the season? I thought like with the Harden situation, of course, with the trade, him coming to the team, I knew his minutes were going to be cut back. But prior to Bones coming at that very start of the season, there was a lot of promise. And then towards the end of the season, of course, the 40-point game against Phoenix. Now, of course, their defense ain't all that great, but Bones has been in the league. This is his 4th season, so he's already left the team when Denver. He's young, but he's not like a rookie who's on a summer league. Like, this guy is ready to play on the team right now, and I don't think if there's not room, maybe we should just think about moving him.
Well, he just finished his 3rd year, and that's important because they picked up his 4th-year option, so he's under contract next year. And the thing with Bones is going into the year, like you're preparing to be the backup point guard, and it's probably tough when a numbers game. Bones, I don't think ever accepted that he was going to be behind so many guys, and when you want to play, that's understandable. The big thing with Bones, I think, if you got to look at what Bones is going to have to do, I think next year is going to be up in the air. We don't know how the point guard situation is going to go when it comes to James Harden, when it comes to Russ. Like, James needs a new contract. Russ has a player option. Bones is on the books, but we're going to see exactly how things go. Like the draft, like we're going to see how that goes. Bones showed his best and he showed his worst in the same time frame, and that time frame was when Russ was out of the lineup. The ceiling for Bones is a guy who, when his shot's going in, everything else kind of makes sense for him. Like, he does a good job of moving the ball to where it needs to go. He does a good job just making the right decisions as far as the shots, and he'll compete as far as rebounds and steals. Like, obviously he's very slight. That's always going to be an issue in the NBA, especially today where, small guards are getting picked on more and more. Teams aren't even playing small guards. The Clippers are one of those teams. Like, the Clippers, their rotation for most of the season, like, they were huge in the backcourt. Like, you couldn't pick on any of those guys. Their starting lineup all had guys 215 pounds or more. Like, there's no, we're going to pick on him. We're going to pick on him. Like, teams that tried James Harden, James Harden forced a lot of turnovers, a lot of strips, grabbed rebounds, and they did a good job executing with their starting lineup. Like, Norman Powell and Russell Westbrook being your smallest guards means you got to deal with a guy in Russ who is a generational athlete, even at this stage of his career. And then you got to deal with a guy in Norm who literally was starting at small forward for a playoff team 2 years ago. I won't advise that, but that's what Portland did because of how much bigger Norm was compared to Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum. So with Bones, like, he's always going to have that activity up. And that's where the issues also showed up. While Russ was still out, Bones went from playing great in Chicago to a week later, he couldn't even play over Xavier Moon. Like,
that New Orleans game was bad.
Like, it was a week of games after that game where teams were like, oh, we've seen Bones Highland play for 2 weeks now. We see what we got to do to make him uncomfortable. Even the Phoenix game, people are going to be like, man, Bones didn't quite score 40. He should have scored 40, but he only had buckets for 3 quarters in that game. That last quarter, him and Brandon both ran out of gas. And like, that was a game Phoenix absolutely needed. But it kind of shows, again, the ups and downs that come with those players. Like, to say that they're bad players, that's not accurate. But to say that, like, they absolutely, like, it's a criticism of the Clippers that they didn't play more, it's like, people got to see the context of how the Clippers season went. Like, the Clippers are not out here happy to win 40 games and you're, in the play-in tournament. It's like they were under 500 entering December. They had to put the pedal to the metal to stay above water, and they did that by playing their best players. And there's going to be an opportunity for all those guys. Again, for Bones, I don't know who the backup point guard is going to be next year. I think Russell Westbrook will have a lot of say in that. For Brandon, Boston has to look at a guy like Amir Coffey and say, I'm going to beat you out for a job. It's just that simple. If you're Kobe Brown, like, I'm pretty sure the Clippers are going to find a way to upgrade, move on from, PJ Tucker and the backup power forward situation you have. If you're Kobe Brown, whoever they bring in at that spot who I think is more than likely going to be a veteran. Like Kobe Brown's job is to beat that guy out. Musa Diabate, now Musa's got competition in Kai Jones. You know, like
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure Musa's going to be in summer league, but I'm not sure if Musa's going to be on the roster next year. And so like you got competition coming, and I'm going to echo the front office. Those young guys' jobs is to make it so that like you're so
Put
you
pressure on
show that you're reliable, skilled, and fit so well that you give the coaching staff no choice but to play. The last Clippers young guy to do that at a consistent level was probably Amir and definitely Terrence Mann in 2021.
Right. All right. Let me ask you this question. Like I said before, if you guys got 40 people in here, we should get these likes up. Let's get these likes up. Everybody that's in the building. We got LA Clipper beat writer, good friend Law Murray of the show, and you just mentioned it right now. We're gonna talk a little about Lawrence Frank. Obviously, the exit interview. Now, what finally interesting to me was he was the only one who had an exit interview on the team this year. So I don't know about you, but it sounded very similar to last year, other than we took the regular season more serious. Other than that, it was more about, hey, let's run it back with the same team. Let's give Kawhi Leonard the extension, the 3-year, $150 million in January. Going to PG, Harden, not really Westbrook, but more so PG and Harden. Let's re-sign them as well. Intuit Dome is coming this year, man. So piece by piece, what is the contract situation with the Clippers? Let's talk about like the salary cap. What can they do moving here and forward? Like what are they looking at? Is there money on the table for them to spend? Are they in like a hole? Are they in the negative? What the hell's going on?
Yeah, this ain't 2K. So and it's a new CBA. So I know a lot of people are like, man, let Paul walk. Nah, you're not. I feel like a lot of people would be just happy with permission and not care about this team. So like, don't let me stop y'all. But if you're Lawrence Frank, it's your responsibility to responsibly get as much of the guys that made your team good back as possible. And what I mean by that is I think that they know that Paul and his reps know the number that the Clippers are at. And so what's Paul to do now? It's probably not the best business to just accept that deal right now. And so you probably decline your player option, go and see what else is out there, see if a team is serious about, giving you the max that they can pay. And then even from there, like the Clippers are going to be able to match anything from any other team. So it's a matter of, does Paul want to really entertain leaving? And the entertainment part is one thing. Actually going through with it, that's completely different. And so there's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of line that goes on in June. It'll be June for another 25 days. And so buckle up. It's going to be a very long, interesting early part of the offseason. And that's really what, the swing factor for the Clippers this offseason is what happens with Paul. Everything else, I'm not really tripping. Like, there ain't a lot they can do whether Paul comes back or not. There's not a lot of money to spend. There's not a lot of guys out there that you'd spend the money for. You'd have to get creative with some certain trades. And again, this is another thing where it's like, not just Clipper fans, these are NBA fans in our Photoshop era. Like, people will see a guy and be like, oh, he can do this for us or whatever. Or he can, if a guy gets to your team, you're going to think the very most unless you outright hate him for whatever reason. And I'm obviously always going to be a lot more measured. Every free agent that might be available to the Clippers is a guy that's going to have some significant, deficiencies that you're going to have to scheme around, that you're going to have to account for. You want to get the most out of a guy, So I don't think you're going to get a Pascal Siakam. You're probably going to have to settle for a Precious Achiuwa, You're like, those are the kind of guys where it's like, hey, who can the Clippers upgrade at the 4? Well, that's your market. You're not, you don't have roster space unless you're going to break up the team with a trade. And to do that, you got to be like, well, we might be better at rebounding, but then you're now weaker at 4 other factors that go into winning basketball games. So you have to consider all that. Obviously, again, Kawhi signed. That's one less thing to worry about. You're just trying to get him healthy and figure out how you're going to do that over the course of the season. But that's probably a conversation for September and October. James, after all that he's been through over the last several off seasons, don't think he's entertaining leaving. Like, everything about James Harden suggests that he is trying to be back with the LA Clippers on a deal that doesn't, cancel out what the Clippers would want to do to upgrade. Like, I don't think James is going to, haggle the Clippers over that. Again, don't know how Russ's situation is going to go because Russ did not go into this offseason the way that he probably would have wanted to. And so there's a lot of things that Russ has to consider. But even then, we're talking about a player who the front office I feel like has been quite clear is not the same priority level as Paul and James. Not the same priority level as what has the front office identified as where they need to be better. And that's clearly to upgrade at the 3-4 spots, not necessarily to find a quote unquote starter, but to find a heavy minute guy. And by heavy minute, I mean, a guy who can play 20 to 25 minutes reliably, basically be your best backup big. A guy who can play more than Amir Coffey, certainly be an upgrade on PJ Tucker. That's the kind of player that the Clippers need. Again, identifying and finding that guy, that's the hard part. And I don't work in the front office, so I'm not going to stress out over that stuff the first week of June. But we know clearly what the Clippers want to do, and it's just a matter of how they actually want to do it.
Harden? What is PG's mindset is from you being with him this season more so? What do you feel like his vibe is with the team? Do you feel like he's close with the team, like really close to the team, like I'm not going to leave this situation? And now they're talking about, he wants that max deal. I don't know how to split that, but that came out after the playoffs that he's looking for a max. And what's his mindset from what you think what's going on with him? Like, is he just looking at it like, okay, I've been in for 4 years. I took us to the conference finals. I got us in the play in 2020-22, even though I played 36 games. I've been carrying the ship at times when Kawhi is not here. Is that his mindset by looking at getting the max? Like, what is he really trying to do? Is he just trying to feel like and flirt with a different team to get the Clippers to give him what he wants?
Yeah, I don't think Paul really at any point wanted to go deep into what he's looking for in a contract or even what he's looking forward to in his next basketball situation. When I say next basketball situation, that could obviously incorporate the Clippers, because just because you keep some of your guys doesn't mean it's the same team. Like, how many guys are with the Clippers now that were in the bubble in 2020, right? Like, teams go in phases, even if some of the same guys are still there. My biggest takeaway from the end of the season, because I mean, Paul tried his best to shut down talk about his contract, and like that was a genuine thing. Like, he's got reps for a reason. Paul didn't even want to talk with the team about his contract after the All-Star break because there was a task at hand to focus on. But I think with the season over, he clearly is going to want to stay here. Like, he's got roots here. He's got unfinished business here. He has guys here that he likes along up and down the hierarchy here. I think there are two factors that Paul is going to at least have pause to when it comes to, do you take whatever from the Clippers to come back? And one of those things absolutely is the health of guys, especially Kawhi Leonard. I just felt like there was a change in the manner with Paul after it was clear Kawhi couldn't come back and play.
Yes.
I think that's a factor. And I think the other factor is the age of the team. Like, the Clippers were the oldest team in the league 3 years ago as well. But the difference was a lot of those guys 3 years ago, you're not talking about your absolute best players. You're talking about a lot of the role players around them. And, it was easy to kind of retool, especially because they knew 3 years ago Kawhi had a significant knee rehab ahead of him. But now your oldest guys, you're the oldest team in the league now, and your oldest guys are your stars. It's different. It means that your opportunities to improve need to come from, younger players. and not necessarily the younger players already on the team. You need to find younger players who still have maybe their best years ahead of them and find a way to acquire those guys. How do you do that? And so Paul could say, hey, the Clippers can do that somehow, or Paul can change teams and go to a situation where, Paul might be older, but like the guys around him are much younger. So I think those are considerations there. I think Paul's going to have to give a long, hard thought to those things. But I also am not looking at this as Paul wants to leave or Paul's got one foot out the door. We're not there yet. The door's open. The door's open. Paul made it very clear that he hedged every time he was asked about anything future related. If we can get it done, this would be nice to do. I think that if I had to put it on a scale of 1 to 4 of how much Paul wants to come back, I can't say 4, but I'm going to say a 3. Do I say strongly wants to come back? Not sure that's accurate, but wants to come back. Yeah. I don't think Paul wants to leave.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, let's let me ask a couple more things, and then bring the people in. Shout out to the people coming in here in the chat box. Again, if you guys have a membership badge, or if this is your first time, if you guys want to ask Law a question, make sure you guys can come on when I drop the link. But let's talk about Kawhi, man, because this is the kind of main thing people want to, kind of get into. What is your thoughts about Kawhi from the future on? Do you feel like Clipper fan base should be concerned about this guy remaining healthy in the postseason? You talk about 21, gets hurt against the Jazz. 22, he didn't play. 23, got hurt in 2 games against the Suns. And then this year, he comes back and plays, and he's not himself, which I want to ask you that question too. The inflammation, they said, didn't heal the way it was supposed to heal. How was Kawhi moving around in practice prior to him coming back to make you think, okay, I'm confident, I'm definite that, okay, the inflammation went down enough where this guy is good enough to play? Or was the Clippers taking a risk, in your opinion, kind of sending him out there and knowing this man ain't 100%?
Well, you know how practice is. This isn't anytime we cover a practice or a shoot around, it's what guys are doing before the actual session, before coaches say, all right, this is what we're doing. We're not even there when guys are stretching, right? We're not even there when Danny Shapiro is taking guys through what they need to do to get ready to go through the actual practice. Or a practice will start with film. We're obviously ushered out of there before they go through all that stuff, right? So there was no. I feel like a lot of people they see how we cover stuff, and they think about what they were actually on teams, or they think of football practices because when you cover football, there's only one game a week. You guys see a little something during the week and whatnot, portions that are quote unquote open to the media, because the hell else are you going to do until game day, right? Basketball is not like that. The NBA is certainly not like that. And so there's no tea leaves there. Everything we get is what we report. Now, I thought that the main concern with Kawhi's knee is that we knew that anytime he had a flare up before, it was a multi-week situation. Well, this wound up being a multi-week situation. When this first popped up, the team was hopeful that, he would be back sooner rather than later, that he wasn't facing an extended absence. All of those things are things that happen when a guy has no structural damage and you're just like, well, what the heck is going on? Why is there swelling? Damn, this is a horrible time. And that's what it wound up being. It was just horrible timing. If this happened in March, then maybe it's a little bit better. But I think the bigger issue is Kawhi's had that knee surgery repaired twice. It's just, even before his ACL tear, we knew that Kawhi had serious issues with his right leg, the quadricep tendinopathy, a degenerative condition. All those things are things where it's when a guy is healthy, you're just man, he still looks great. And when a guy is not healthy, it's like it's a ticking time bomb, and you're always going to be concerned about it. And so I don't think there was a risk. I think the Clippers did as much as they could. I think Kawhi did as much as he could to get his knee to the point where he could play. And you saw it took some time for him to get comfortable in game 2 against the Mavericks. He started to look a lot better, the second half of game 2. And he might have got a little tired in the fourth quarter of that game. But you saw where it's like, okay, he was rusty. He needed time. It looked like he got tired. He didn't quite have his legs, but he looked he looked like a guy who was going to be able to help the Clippers down the road in that series. Unfortunately, that thing swelled up on him before game 3 when the series shifted to Dallas. He was listed as questionable. You saw in the first half, okay, this doesn't look like how it looked in game 2. And then you saw him get a dunk, and you're like, all right, but then you see PG throw that lob to him, and he hangs on the rim. Thankfully, the Mavericks called timeout, and allowed Kawhi to take his time getting down from them. But you just knew it was cooked. Like it was a wrap for Kawhi in that series, at least. He didn't make a single 3 in game 2. He didn't attempt a single 3 in game 3. I asked him practice, in between game 3 and 4. I asked T-Lou, it's like, so can Kawhi make threes? Can he help y'all? And T-Lou diplomatically said, yes, he can. And then you never saw Kawhi again. So there's knee inflammation is tricky. That's what we heard this whole time. It's unfortunately that we become WebMD basketball experts every postseason when it comes to covering the Clippers, covering Kawhi. But that's what it is. And you're always going to, unfortunately, that's just going to be a factor going forward. That's one of the reasons why I said whatever championship window existed for the Clippers over these last few years, I just don't think that you can, objectively say that that window is open still, because if Kawhi is healthy for the 2025 playoffs from the start and throughout and through the end, it will be the first time in 5 years. And at that point, what does the rest of your team look like? And at that point, what does the rest of the West look like? That's why you got to be like, you got to reopen the window. It's closed right now.
I'm gonna ask you one more thing if I let people in. So I'm looking at this play right here. Obviously,
that's the alley-oop I'm talking about.
You said what? The one that you're talking about?
Yep, that's the alley-oop I'm talking about. Yep.
Yeah. So he's swinging on the rim, and like you said, thank God they called a timeout. But it's like, look how long he's swinging on the rim for, like 3, 4, 5 seconds, and he gives you this look.
I asked Kawhi about that. So Kawhi, he met with the media after that game. We all knew how solemn he was and how frustrated he was. And I asked him, I'm like, Paul really threw that lob to you. And Kawhi he just shrugged and smiled, and I was like, man, I knew something was up because they didn't even give you a check for it. It's like Kawhi was like, yeah, they said, we know what you're dealing with, so we're going to let you slide. Like, so, yeah, I mean, me and Kawhi, we could laugh about it, but it was the kind of laughter where, like that Wu-Tang John back in the day, after the laughter come the tears, man. So, yeah, he knew that he was not himself. He wanted to play. You know what? He probably could have played the rest of the series, but he was not going to be himself. He was going to be a decoy. That's what he looked like in game 3. He was out there, and it's just like,
right.
It's like having Randy Moss just run non-routes. Just to run.
I don't mean to interrupt you. I don't mean to interrupt you on that, but that was a great point you made, because see, it's a theory that people feel like, oh, you can just go out there and give me 20, 15, 20 minutes. I'm like, the motherfucker, he gave you as much as he could give you on the court. Yeah. And if you put him out there again, and he's not Kawhi Leonard, what's the point?
Or if you do make something worse, and then it's like people love seeing a guy like play hurt and be like, see, why couldn't he play hurt? Well, we saw OG Anunoby go out there at game 7, and everyone's like, yeah, OG's playing. And then after he plays for 5 minutes, everyone's like, oh, yeah, he's not healthy. And you never saw him again. Like it was super irresponsible probably to put OG out there. I don't know what they shot that dude up with to even get him to put a uniform on. And then after 5 minutes, everyone's like, yeah, that adrenaline was off after he made a couple shots. Like he couldn't move. He couldn't defend. He couldn't help you. Like Kawhi was a liability in game 3. he arguably was a liability in game 2. Like, he did not look like Kawhi, and everyone is looking at him like the Dallas Mavericks. They're not looking at him like, oh, he's coming back from injury. No, they're trying to win a playoff game. They're down 1-0 in the series. And not just down 1-0, but they got smacked in game 1. They're trying to win a playoff series. So for everyone else, for Kawhi, he's like, man, I got to get back into it. For his teammates, he's like, man, Kawhi's here. We got to get him back into it. The Mavericks are like, oh, he's red meat. Like, we got to attack. And again, he looked okay in game 2. He was bad. He was legitimately bad in game 3. He got an and one, but besides that, Kawhi couldn't dribble. He couldn't make plays for his teammates. He turned the ball over at a high rate. He wasn't shooting at a high, like the Mavericks were attacking his feet defensively. Like, he couldn't guard. Like, it's like people are like, yeah, get him out there so that we can say that our franchise player was out there. You know what? Kawhi's thinking the same thing. That's why he played. Kawhi, like, spent
he couldn't take nobody talking. He didn't want to hear that. He didn't want to hear that.
Kawhi spent the entire year beating the allegations. Like, again, people have this idea that Kawhi doesn't want to play. It's the opposite. Kawhi wanted to play, and the organization was like, this ain't it. Like, and again, that's one of the things Paul George alluded to. It's like, look, if it was up to Kawhi, like, Paul George winds up speaking for a lot of dudes a lot of the time. And I don't think people appreciate what it means to be a teammate, what it means to be a star player, and to sit down and consistently speak. I give Paul a lot of credit because Paul didn't duck smoke this year. You know, that's really been my experience covering PG over these time. Like, Paul George speaks consistently more than anybody else on the entire team at any level. He could do more. The Clippers are the Clippers when it comes to, you know, media related things, but Paul George was consistently there in a way that none of his star teammates were, you know, for the most part. When the season ended, like, that was Paul George on the podium. And when they got embarrassed by 30 points, there are a lot of dudes who hustled to get out of the arena. But Paul George, you know, he got up there and said what he had to say, even if it was a lot of what he said was stuff that was going to get cut and used against him when guys had to write stuff about him after the season was over. And so that gets exhausting too. Well, like, when we talk about, oh, Kawhi's not able to finish, and no one's blaming Kawhi, but that means that if you're Kawhi's, you know, sidekick, that means that you're the guy who's got to not only speak for you and the team, but you got to speak for your other star teammates as well.
It's been on his shoulders for 4 years, and I don't think people are realizing that. I'm glad you brought that point up. It's like no one, and I think no one spoke bad about Kawhi either, as frustrated and as it is.
No one should speak bad about him. Like, we all know what it is. Like, he tried. Bodies were happening the way they happened, man.
And it's like, yeah, I gotta let the people in. I know they got questions to ask. They're all in the chat. But what's the last thing about Ty Lue's contract extension when you thought it was a 5-year deal? Cause I know you covered it. You announced it.
I think the biggest number there is the 5 years. I mean, the money, Ty Lue is always going to get paid. 5 years to me means that they're committed to Ty Lue longer than they're committed to any player on the team. And that is something that, you know, we all know that extensions can be phony. Like, there are a bunch of dudes, coaches, they'll get extended 1 year and then a year or two later they're gone anyway. But the fact that that pact is being made, it's like, well, there's not a player on the team under contract for, you know, the duration that Ty Lue is under contract for. I mean, it's the same thing with player contracts. Guys that get extended and then a year later they're asking out. Like, Paul George did that in OKC, signed a new contract, and then a year later he was like, hey, Kawhi's over there. Can you guys do me a solid? So I think that all it does is it gives me one less thing to talk about, something that I wasn't even trying to talk about to begin with. Like, I don't need to talk about, hey, when what's the Clippers, you know, commitment to their head coach? Well, that's their commitment to their head coach. It's also a commitment to a brain trust, because Lawrence Frank and Tyronn Lue, for whatever people want to talk about as far as disconnects and all that other BS, it's like, no, like, those guys as far as I've seen a lot of front offices and coaching staffs, not just in 2024, but as long as I've been covering the league, as long as I've been interested in the league, and been on the planet for a little while now. So I've got a lot of case studies here. Like there are way worse situations. Actually, you're not going to find a lot of better situations as far as how their front office and the coaching staff work together. So I think Tyronn Lue's biggest thing going forward is, he's got Paris. He's got to figure out the rest of his coaching staff. But he's done that before. 3 years ago, Chauncey Billups, Kenny Atkinson, Roy Rogers, they all left for, other assistant positions. So he's had to retool his coaching staff. Every head coach has to refresh, the coaches in the building. And that is a way to keep your message fresh as well. As much as the head coach is the head coach, it's those other coaches that do a lot of the work with the players, whether they're young guys, stars, whoever. And those guys have a voice as well. They have a voice to the head coach. And it's a head coach's responsibility to make sure that his staff is fresh, and in turn, to make sure those voices are fresh so guys aren't tuning you out, so that new ideas are implemented, so that if you're not working on something well defensively, you got guys who come in with some fresh ideas to bolster that part of your game. Same thing with the other end of the floor.
Right on. All right, we just got our first guy, man. My man Mass. What's good, Mass?
Hey, what's up, BJ? Hey, what's up, Law, man? First and foremost, man, great work, man. I read some of your stuff before down in LA. You're consistent, you're fair. I appreciate your old school journalism integrity. It just seems like in today's new era, not a lot of guys have that in the journalism world. So I got to give you your praise when it comes to that, man. I just had two questions, and then I'll let BJ move on. The first one is kind of a statement. You're from Philly, correct?
Yep.
Okay. So I was just there visiting not too long ago, the DC area, and we drove through Baltimore into Philly. So when you go back there, Law, there's a place called All Day Hoagies. It's black owned by a black woman in North Philly, man. Check it out, man. It's the best hoagies in Philadelphia, man. So when you go back home, man, just if you can, just try them out, man.
I'll definitely check them out, especially if they don't have hoagies.
Yeah, for sure.
I do not like subs or hoagies.
Yeah.
Cheesesteak.
What'd you say?
I said cheesesteak. We can talk, but yeah, I'm not a cold cuts type. So
okay.
Yeah. I'll always check somebody out.
Yeah, I went to Pat's and Geno's, man, and I wasn't impressed. I think De Los Santos has the best Philly cheesesteak in Philly. But my question is this, though, man. You wrote an article late May, and you talked about, is James Harden a keeper? And I read it, right? I was just kind of on Google, and I read about different teams, and I came across your article, right? And you posed the question, right? Is he a keeper? Obviously, I'm a Rockets fan, diehard Rockets fan. That's my squad. So I've seen the James Harden failures. I've seen him at his best and his worst. I think your question is valid, and I think the personnel with him matters, right? Because when he came onto the team, Law, Ty kind of gave James the reign, right? We know James isn't great off the basketball, meaning you have to kind of somewhat give him the team to run, because you're not going to get the best James Harden if he's playing off the ball, in my opinion. I mean, we saw him in Houston with Chris Paul, and even when we were winning games versus the Warriors, he was pouting because Chris was getting all the credit for playmaking and doing his thing. I don't think he's a keeper, man. I think he does some great things during the season. I think he has great moments, but can he be your best playmaker and facilitator to start your offense? And then I pose this to you as well. In the fourth quarter, when you need a bucket and you need good old-fashioned offense, I mean, you're there up close and down there. I mean, you trust that?
I gotta say, well, the article you're talking about, in case people missed it, I gotta say that was a mailbag. So I'm not going to take credit for the question there.
Okay.
My readers, that was one of the questions that I responded to as part of that mailbag. And I had a pretty short answer that for the Clippers, James was, I'm telling you, I've seen a lot of Clippers basketball over the last, just this entire era at the very least. And when James got to the team, T. Lue didn't give the whole offense to him. They try to compromise. They try to have Russ still be the point guard, and they wanted James to be the shooting guard. And some people had a feeling about how that would work, but they had to see it fail for change to happen. And it sucked the way it happened, because just like Bones Highland, like Russ went into that whole offseason, that whole training camp, planning to be the starting point guard. They completely changed how they were going to play basketball in that training camp to fit Russ's strengths, and therefore allow Russ to make all of the guys around them better. And that was a good way to hoop. Like, guys were going to have more ball movement, more body movement, more pace. That was going to be the team that they wanted to be. Now, if you're a player, that's what you prepare for. If you're a coach, that's what you prepare for. If you're a front office, that's not what you're preparing for. You're preparing to upgrade the team however way you can do it. And we all knew James, even the stars knew, even Russ knew, they all knew James was probably coming. They tried to compromise. What they didn't know was they were going to fail as much as they did. When James was at his best, that's how you get 26-5. Like, we just need to be objective about that. Like, James was the engine of the NBA's best offense over a span that was longer than like 10 weeks. That's pretty significant. And so everyone's going to talk about the late game stuff, or, James's shortcomings. And the reality is that dude made a lot of guys better more often than he held anything back or held anything down. And I don't think you want James as the best player on your team. I don't think that you really want James as the second best player on your team over an extended period of time. We saw in the playoffs how that kind of went. But I also thought James played better in the playoffs than a lot of people were expecting, or a lot of people gave him credit for. And I think that James was also in a spot where no one wanted him to be the number 1 or 2 guy. He was always supposed to be the number 3 guy and the facilitator of their offense. And if Kawhi was healthy, and we saw Kawhi and Paul and James healthy, like, that's the version of the team that they are going to want to be if they bring all those guys back. It's a really tricky thing, but we're talking about James Harden versus your quote unquote average point guard. And that's really how I look at it. And I still think James Harden is an above average point guard, if we're going to talk about it in those terms. Is James Harden a top 5 player in the NBA or a top 5 point guard in the NBA? No, I can objectively say he's not. Like, there's a bunch of guys who made all-star games, all NBA teams, to show where that is. But is James Harden above average, considering where else the Clippers are from a roster standpoint? Absolutely.
Great response. I mean, I can't push back on most things that you said. Let me close out with this just real quick, BJ. 2 quick things. Is James waiting for Paul with his contract situation, or would the Clippers handle James first? That's first. And then secondly, do they want James back? I mean, from what you're hearing, I mean, behind the scenes, when the doors close at night, I mean, does this team, management, coaching staff, I mean, do they want James back?
Yeah, everybody's going to want James back.
Okay.
James wants to be back. The front office, they didn't make that trade for it to be a rental.
Okay.
James doesn't, I don't think James wants to do this thing again where he's changing. Like, everything has been good as far as like the situation now. As far as the timing, I have no idea how that's going to go, because James, I don't think it's going to be complicated. And Paul is.
Okay.
James just got here. James does not want to bounce around. James has said he wants to retire here. Like, the coaching staff, the only thing you need to see as far as the coaching staff is, if there's something that I was saying in the regular season, is I felt like James was playing too much. Like, I felt like James's workload was a little more than it needed to be, especially when Russ was healthy. And so that's something where the team needs to understand, if James is back next year, like, James probably should not be if he's a 30-minute player, he can't be close to the 35 minutes that he was. And that was still a 12-year low. Like BJ was mentioning earlier when we were talking about playing certain guys, and I was like, dog, James ain't going for that. James Harden is one of the most stubborn players I've ever been around when it comes to his workload and his willingness to play, no matter how well he's playing or how banged up he is.
Oh,
like,
trust me. Yeah, I told you.
He is he is harder to have convinced sit down than
Mhm.
anybody.
Agree.
Anybody. And we saw that. Like there was a game Paul and Kawhi sat in against the Milwaukee Bucks, and I was like, well, James is going to sit too, except James didn't sit.
Right.
They listed as questionable, but they couldn't sit.
Hey, Law, just real quick, BJ, if you don't mind, and he can answer it. I'll go off the air real quick. Paul, James, Russ, and Kawhi. They're all from that southern LA region, correct? Somewhere around there. Not quite down LA, but they're all from there. And I'll take this question off air. How does that work? I mean, does that factor into? I mean, I know it's not on the court, but those things do play a role, right? I mean, you got 4 guys who are pretty big names, and they're all from the region. I'll take it off the air, man, but can you touch real quick on what you've seen, or how does that impact basketball on the court? Because I got to imagine it does a little bit.
Yeah, it's not just that they're
Thank you,
from
BJ.
here.
Thank you all, man. Hey, man, great work, buddy. Great work, man.
Thank
Yes,
you.
sir.
I appreciate it, man. I appreciate anybody who reads what I put together because, like I said, we're not blogging. I'm not waiting for dudes to say stuff, and I'm writing 500 words on it and giving a hot take at the end. Like we really got to do some real stuff out here. So, but like when it comes to those dudes, and I mean, this is a big major point here. Like one of the reasons it was easier to break up the 2017 Lob City group is because, you know, the connection wasn't as deep, like on an interpersonal level or beyond that. Like these guys individually are great, right? So individually, they're future Hall of Famers. They've done stuff in this league for a long time. But like, it's not just that they're from here, but they all knew each other. Like these guys have known each other for a long time, and they were motivated to not just win for themselves, not just win for each other, but to win for the city. You know, like there's a real like sense of pride that comes in that responsibility. And that makes it more disappointing when you fail. It makes it harder to move on from if that's what winds up having to happen. Like we're not talking about, hey, James Harden, you thinking about leaving the Utah Jazz? Russell Westbrook, you thinking about leaving the New Orleans Pelicans? Paul George, you thinking about leaving the Minnesota? Like, no, dog. Like they came here for reasons that go beyond basketball. And to leave that is, you know, especially when you're not a pariah, right? Like these guys, maybe Russ got to that point with the Lakers, but he recovered his sense of being here while he was with the Clippers. It is much harder to, you know, put that aside, let that go and go somewhere else. And so, yeah, it is a factor. It is probably one of the biggest factors when we talk about the state of the offseason and the Clippers.
Right. As y'all come in and smash the like button, got Law Murray in for a little bit longer. If y'all want to come in and ask any questions, make sure y'all tap in that link. But let's get our other person here, JM Clippers fan, man. What's good, bro? How you doing?
Hey, salute. Excuse me. Salute, Mr. BJ. Respect to you, Mr. Law Murray. I'll be honest, like I heard of you, but Mr. Pull Up himself, he focused on you or featured you so much that I started following your work, and you got a real good unbiased take on everything, and you know you got a good writing skill and all of that. So I do follow you more thanks to hearing BJ talk more about you on the show and watching you on the show. So good work and all of that stuff, man. Keep going and keep going. And that's what's up. Now I got just not too many questions. I don't really talk long, but I'm gonna get. Now you said earlier that not even gonna get into our young stars. You pretty much said how you felt about that, so I'm not even gonna go there. Do you think the ISO that we play, do you think that help us or did that hurt us?
I love that question. You know why I love that question? Because we about to see this NBA Finals, and it's the most ISO NBA Finals I can remember. Like I gotta like really look up a more ISO heavy NBA Finals that you're about to see, like for real. I mean, so the Clippers led the league in both isolation possessions. They also led the league in isolation scoring efficiency. That means that they beat teams' ass all year long in ISO ball, okay? But the
Yeah.
number 2 and 3 teams were literally the Celtics and the Mavericks. Number 2 and 3. You if you like pull up threes and as few passes as possible, you're gonna like this NBA Finals, bro. Like, so I think people look, isolation basketball gets a bad rap because it is the antithesis of what you saw winning a lot in the 2010s, beating teams that had no business being beat or whatever. Like, Steve Kerr, Greg Popovich, when those teams won, it was promoting ball movement, body movements, guys just knowing where they're supposed to be, and an abundance of plays, freestyle in basketball. And the only guy who really shook that up was like when KD got there, and there was that like tension, right? Of, there's your style of your ball movement, and then there's me. When you need a bucket, I can get a bucket, like obviously that was so powerful that those teams ran through their playoff runs with KD. And the ironic thing about Kawhi is playing on an ISO heavy team, but has won championships where offenses were expanded. The thing about ISO ball is that when it doesn't work, it's obviously an eyesore, and everyone can see it doesn't work. But the thing about those other styles of play is when it doesn't work, people are not tripping as much, even though you can have a team that's happy to share the ball, even if it's sharing the ball with the other team. You know what I'm saying? Like, you'll have teams being like, yeah, like we're just going to throw the ball over a lot. 20 turnovers later, what you going to say? Oh, at least they were passing the ball. Like, no, sometimes you just want the ball in the guy's hands that you want the ball in, and everyone else has to play off of that. You're going to see a lot of that in the NBA Finals. You saw a lot of that with the LA Clippers. I cannot stress this enough. Clippers were 26-5 because their ISO ball was hella powerful. They had 3 of the most elite isolation players to play the game in 2024, not just all time, just in 2024 alone. Like, those dudes were really good at what they were doing. So I'm going to say this. The Clippers knew that they needed to be better with their execution. There are things with the offense that need to be better from a personnel standpoint, and some of that is from a schematic standpoint. Like, the Clippers took the fewest catch and shoot threes in the league this year in 4 NBA seasons. Like, that's crazy. It's even crazier when you recognize that the Clippers were an elite 3-point shooting team. Like, those dudes were great at shooting threes and the worst team in actually creating the best looks for those threes. So, is that a problem? When you talk about winning with execution, can the Clippers be better at that? Yes. But there's also a real chance that that team exists next year. If you bring James back and actually get him in a training camp instead of, openly losing games for 2-3 weeks straight to get him integrated while your season has already started, it's like naturally those are going to probably be better at what they're doing if that's the team that you bring back. And if that's not the team that you bring back, all the stuff that you lose from an ISO standpoint, because let me tell y'all talk whatever y'all say about Paul George now. If that dude leaves, you're not getting that player back. You're not going to find a better isolation player in that space. You're not going to find a better guy who can hit pull-up shots in the mid-range or beyond the arc. You're not going to find a better guy who you're even asking to come off the screens or asking to spot up while the pick and roll is going on the other side of the floor. You're not going to have that player. But you know what? You might get more catch and shoot threes because you need them. You might have to have more ball movement and more body movement because you need to. You might post up Zoo because you need to. So I'm just saying, be careful what y'all ask for, and what y'all ask for had to be in the context of what makes the team good already. You don't want to cut your nose to spite your face. And when it comes to ISO ball, I know a lot of people, they get excited about ISO ball, about the conversation with it. It's going to be an exciting series because you got 2 elite ISO ball teams. And you know what? The Clippers were better than both of them in terms of that particular aspect of playing ball.
I like that. That was a good answer. Only thing I will add to that is maybe like if we use like Mavs use the ISO, they use Kyrie could go ISO, Luka could go ISO, but their backcourt is solid. So maybe you got a good point. If we did use ISO and had a power forward in there help Zoo, maybe we'll be right there with the Mavs at. Because our style of play is similar to the Mavs. Except for they got Gafford and they got they other power Lively or whoever he is when they come in. we just played one center and four guards. So you got a point. Maybe we had another big man to help Zoo. Maybe it will go further.
Well,
You know?
I think what will help everything go further. If we talk about playoffs, the biggest picture thing is Kawhi Leonard playing ball or not? If Kawhi
Oh
Leonard,
yeah, I know you're gonna get there.
if you had all NBA Kawhi Leonard in the playoff series with the Mavericks, where does that series go? Like the Clippers,
You
not just got 2 games off the Mavericks, but they beat the hell out of the Mavericks in those 2 games. I know one of them saw the Mavericks return that ass whipping in the same game. You know, you don't see a lot of playoff games where a team goes up 31 and is down only to have to re-win the game. But, you know, it helps to go up 31, right? And it helps
yeah.
to go up 29. And the Clippers did that without their best player. Like they beat the Mavericks twice without their best player, and they failed to win a game with Kawhi Leonard playing in the playoffs this year. That's the
Would
big
that
picture
leave?
thing we're talking about.
And that was going to be my second question for you, because I know the Kawhi question is always going to come. And I agree, he has not been there. As you see my picture, I'm a Clipper fan since Crawford kept winning 6th Man of the Year 3 times in a row. You know, so I'm a Clipper fan. I just happen to like Kawhi. So it was a double-edged sword for me, or winning when he came to the Clippers, you know what I mean? So I'm a Clipper fan first, right, and a Kawhi fan, second. Either way, but so that's gonna be my next question. You seen Kawhi go out, and we seem to lose it every time he goes out. So I had a proposal that how about if Kawhi comes off the bench, and but like when I proposed this on this page or pull up podcast, a lot of people, that's crazy, getting paid 51 million, blah blah blah. But the reason why I proposed it is because if he comes off the bench, it will not disrupt the starting 5, right? I propose that Kawhi is no longer capable of being the number 1 guy, which he never was really the number 1 guy, except for Toronto, but he still did it coming off the bench, basically. So I was like, well, if you keep dependent on him, solely on him, mind you, we got 14 other players. We got Harden, we got PG, we got a lot, you know what I'm saying? There's a lot of more players. So I'm like, all right, well, clearly maybe it's time for a change. Like you said earlier, like maybe Ty has to come in with new eyes or new ideas. So I'm like, well, it doesn't make sense to keep putting Kawhi in a starting 5, because if he could get hurt at any moment, which is basically reality, it ain't even hating or nothing, it's the truth. He could really get hurt whenever it could happen. So to me, it would be better to have Ty create a strong 5. We got a lot of stars. There's rumors we're going to bring in a real point guard, Kyle Lowry. We're looking at DeMarcus Rosen. I hope PG's. But either way, so anyway, my take, I already said, I don't want to keep repeating myself. So what is your take on my take of thinking that Kawhi is better suited coming off the bench? So that way, if he do get injured, it won't disrupt the flow of the starting 5.
Respectfully, we've been there already. When Kawhi came back from the ACL 2 seasons ago, y'all might remember those first games that he played, he volunteered to come off the bench. And, that was not something the coaching staff wanted to do. But that was Kawhi Leonard's grand idea. Hey, like, why don't I come off the bench? So you know what? I'm going to give you credit because we've been there. Kawhi's been there mentally. The coaching staff has been there. And you'll never see that again because ironically, he got hurt. So, like, there is no, like, hey, like, let's make this happen. It's like, nah, man, like, T-Lou verbatim. Toronto verbatim was like, that's nasty. We're not doing that. And so, like, that's the thing. No one would think that Kawhi would volunteer to do that, but it's like, yeah, Kawhi volunteered to come off the bench, and it was like,
trash.
I was sitting there, I'm like looking, I'm like, When's he coming back? When's he coming in? Period. Like 10 guys played before Kawhi came in. It wasn't just that he came. It's like my man literally didn't play the first quarter, comes in the middle of the second quarter. And I'm like, oh wow. Like, and then he comes out like, shot out of a cannon. And that idea sounds nice until you're getting your ass kicked, which is what happened when they played the Suns in their home opener the following Sunday. Like they managed to beat the Lakers because of course they did. But then Devin Booker runs circle around your starting five. That isn't good enough. And then Kawhi comes in and you're down by 10 points. So that's, I get the idea. I think the reality is like your best, you start your best five, the five that makes sense to start, and you go from there. They will have to come up with ways to protect Kawhi next year. I don't think you're going to see Kawhi play, for example, all 5 games of a 5-game and 7-game stretch. Now, obviously, with the Intuit Dome opening this summer, you're hoping you don't have many stretches of 5 games in 7 days like this past year. But that's really like there's going to be more load management. There's going to be a smarter. I don't even want to say smarter. I think they're going to have to find a way to, not put so much on Kawhi where, they put his knee at risk of flaring up. But any way they do that, it's going to be decisions made by people who have a lot more expertise in this field than me or anyone watching or covering the team. And we're going to react accordingly and we'll go from there. But I get the point. I get the sentiment. I guarantee you that Kawhi has thought about the sentiment enough to actually put it into practice, which you don't see with a lot of stars of his ilk. And because we saw it and because he got hurt anyway, I don't think that the Clippers are going to be going for that. But yeah.
And that was a good answer. But I did add, and that it will force Ty to put a stronger starting. That is the key factor, like you said. It didn't work back then because our starting five wasn't really up to power. I only suggest that with, it got to be
work, not just because of that starting five, but also because of what it does to your rotations in general. Like, it's like you're trying to implement Kawhi Leonard somehow into a unit that isn't started, and that's a lot going on.
But if he came off the bench, right, he'll be coming in with the second string. He won't be coming in with the first. I mean, going that far, but it would only depend. And I admit what you said. The only thing that is more important, my theory, and I'm done with this because I know there's other people waiting. My only theory that make this work, if Ty Lue somehow sees that out of 14 other players, that they all good, every last one of them, if he's able to create a starting five with our other 14, then Kawhi could come in just like Coffee comes in, just like any Tice comes in, like he'll come off the bench. And being if Ty keeps it ISO, you're not gonna really need no planning or nothing. It just come in, it's your time to score. Which I'm not. You don't even have to answer that because you already did. And then I'm gonna get off the panel with just one question. You could just tell everybody else, and I'm done. If we changed our system from ISO to, like you said earlier, a more pass-oriented team, because you got Kawhi coming from Pop with a more strategic, whatever that word is, offense. You got him coming from Toronto with a more pass and offense plus 2 point guards. Do you think that if we get a point guard, like we're looking like at Kyrie, and we go get a power forward, and is Kai Jones like really here to play or not? Would you think that give us a better chance if we twisted up our system and added in a power forward and a point guard? And I'm gonna end with that. Yo, I love you, man. Yo, I just met you, heard from you. I thank BJ for introducing me to you. Man, keep up your great job, man. I'm gonna close just listening to you, man. I'm off.
Yeah. I appreciate it. Yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah, I don't know. We're talking a lot about the offense, and the offense was really good. It wasn't perfect, but it was really good. And I just feel like next year's team, it's the defense that needs to be a little better, and it's the rebound that needs to be a little better. But it's just you just got to get one more contributor to balance your rotation out. And you're going to need a young guy to pop at some point because you just don't have enough players to be acquiring veteran-wise. So the young guys are always going to get an opportunity. And once those young guys show that they need more seasoning, that's when you go and get a vet because you know that the vet is going to just be plug and play, even if the ceiling is lower. So I'm very interested to see how the season goes, the offseason goes. The offense is going to be different. And I know people want to see more passes and more cuts and all that. Like, I bet a lot of people will. But at the end of the day, you just want guys to make shots. Clippers got plenty of that. Like, they're trying to retain. They're trying to retain the shot makers and then figure out the other stuff below that.
Like, not to mention the two-way players. We got both.
Like I said, if Paul leaves, then guess what? We're gonna have to talk about the offense a lot more than we need to now. Let's just put it that way.
Yes, sir. All right, we got two more people, and then we're gonna get up out of here. I know Law and I are both busy with that, but let's go to my man Thomas. What's good, Sean? How you doing, man? What you got with Law?
What's going on, BJ? Law, man, I'm glad Law was spitting all the echo and stuff I've been screaming. The offense is far from the problem. I agree with you, Law, 100%. The defense is the main issue that I have with Ty Lue. He don't play the defenders. And again, we won 2 games without Kawhi. With Kawhi, I'm a little more assertive and aggressive with my takes, Law. So I'll say what I think I'm probably saying for you. If Kawhi plays, that series over in 5. And if you want me to be nice and considerate to the Mavs, I'll hear 6. Just because the Ty Lue plays too much offense over defense. If Kawhi plays, the Mavericks are on the couch round 1, as we all know. But so let's get to the questions. Law. If you can't answer this, just say no comment. I'd hate for Kawhi's uncle to take any animosity at you. If Kawhi, you mentioned Kawhi's timing on his knee, right? That's been the most problems out of the issues. It's all about timing. Like you said it best, Law. To say, you basically echo everything I've been saying. It's just bad timing. So the question is, if we had to run the NBA Finals right now, is Kawhi 100% to play? Can you address that?
Yeah, we're gonna address that. First of all, shout out to all these comments because yeah, I'm just gonna say that. Y'all entertaining. Second of all, we don't have any indication of whether Kawhi would have been healthy enough right now. And I don't think that we've got the worst thing possible, which is Kawhi not being able to, suit up for Paris. I've heard nothing along the lines of, Team USA with, trials beginning a month from now, them saying, hey, we need to find another guy, So no news is good news as far as I'm concerned. I'm sure we'll get an update before they actually start practicing for real in Vegas. No one seems to be tripping, but we do know that Kawhi wasn't going to be healthy to start the semifinals. And that's the tough part. Like
you said he wasn't?
He wasn't going to start the semifinals if they advanced past Dallas. And so I think what's
I'm sorry, Law. Did you say he was or was? I'm sorry.
Kawhi Leonard would not have started.
Okay.
Against Oklahoma City. And I think, it's tough. Like I said, when a guy tears his ACL because a guy bumps him, everyone knows what he's dealing with. Even that was murky because the team wasn't transparent about the diagnosis of his injury until the season's over and no one could talk about it. Last year with the meniscus, same thing. Like we're all trying to be like, I probably know where he got hurt, but no one's talking about the actual injury until the season's over and no one can talk about it. This time around, we knew what it was before. We knew what it was during, and we knew what it was after. And it's more frustrating because it's like people want to see blood, I guess. People want to see a diagnosis that everyone's familiar with. Inflammation just sounds like some shit where it's like, oh, what the hell? Until you watch him play and it's like, oh, he's dealing with something that is difficult to play with. And so it's a big issue. Can't say what the state of Kawhi is right now, but I'm sure that we'll know all we need to know in a month or so.
Yeah, most definitely. I agree with that. It's. Do you think going into next season, I know you mentioned, and the way you answered James' question kind of makes me want to re-ask you to kind of switch up how I was going to ask you this question. Okay, so I'm like you. All right, so the man low managed, injured. The man didn't low manage, injured. So why would they even? I mean, so you mentioned you really think they're going to low manage again next year? That's part of the question, and then the next part, I guess, is, do you think that they're really, with the knee being intact? No, are they really thinking he's going to be the number one guy going into next year as the number one option? Like that's going to be the leading scorer of the team, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, they ain't got no choice. Like, we talking about people who, everybody is looking for Kawhi to be Kawhi, Like,
Facts.
Kawhi can't be going in the next season trying to be scared of an injury. If anything, anybody who hoops will tell you, like, that's when you start messing up for real, Like,
Yep.
you got to be able to be on the floor mentally and physically, trying to be the best basketball player you are for your team, not be like, oh, I might step on somebody's foot, this might end. Like, and that's what Kawhi was great last year, man, because not just because he was out there suited up and playing as consistently as he was, but he played more minutes than he ever played, even going back to the San Antonio days. He dunked
He
more
changed
than
positions.
and yeah, like, because Marcus Morris Sr., Nicholas Batum, Robert Covington, because those guys weren't on the team, like, they considered starting PJ Tucker, which would have addressed, the size part of things. But the Clippers didn't lose games because they were too small. Like, hell, I don't even want to get into wins and losses. Like, they were a successful team. They were on a great team, but they were a very good team this past year. And so anything related to wins and losses is nitpicking. Like, we know what kind of team they were last year. So, like, Kawhi was out there playing up a position, but look at the state of the NBA. You got your behemoths at power forward. You also have guys like Jalen Williams starting at power forward. Like, it's a game to game thing. And so, like, when you build your team, you want to be able to beat all kinds of teams that are small, teams that are big, teams that are perimeter oriented, teams that move the ball a lot. And you just want to be able to say in the regular season, we're going to win 60% of our games. And in the playoffs, you want to say, hey, however you line up, we can be better than you over the course of 7 games. So with Kawhi, it's going to be tough because, to your point, we've seen this dude get load managed aggressively. We've seen this dude have to come back from an injury. We've seen him miss an entire year. We saw him this year play like a normal basketball player, like a star. We almost took it for granted. And then he goes out and it's like, shit, there it is. So, yeah, when you run through all those options, and trust me, I'm just someone covering the team. There are people who are watching the team. The front office is trying to figure this out too. Like, T. Lue is laughing. It's the kind of nervous laughter where it's like, what the fuck, man? Like the delusional kind of laughter. But he's like, yeah, I'm going back to load management next year with Kawhi. No one knows what the hell to do. I know people keep being like, hey, use the other players. It's like, all right, man. Like,
yeah, that's
how
got
this
nothing
shit
to do with
works,
it,
man. Like,
right,
you know what,
right.
man? You want to win about 10 fewer games next year? Go ahead and play a 12-man rotation. Okay, you can go ahead and do that. Like, you know what? You might be forced to do that because guys aren't available. That's what we saw the year before. So the reality is they did what they had to do to stay out of the play-in tournament. They unfortunately didn't get what they needed to get to advance. That's been the case for most of the last 4 years. And I know people want someone fired or replaced every time that shit happens. And it's just like, as frustrating as it is, like, you got to have some resolve about it. And so, it'll be interesting to see what the plan is to have Kawhi get not just playing the way that he is capable of playing. Like, he was great last year. Like, we have to objectively say he was an all-NBA selection because he was outstanding. Now your goal is, can you get that player through a season where you're not in the play-in tournament like a lot of these other clown teams, and then get through the playoffs? That is a lot of time, man. And people get paid a lot more than me to figure that out. I'm just here to kind of observe everything and contextualize it appropriately. Yeah, no doubt. I'm gonna throw this at you, then we'll let old man go. So I can go ahead and give you 10 more wins off top of the season with a real simple fix. I think one of the fixes is not making a trade after training camp where you have to change everything. Well, okay, yeah, that too. But you're gonna win more games that way. Well, yeah, for sure. But here's the and this is why I am one of those guys who's about sick of Ty Lue. And I'm going to give you a second example after the first example I'm about to give you. That way, it backs up the notion of what I said. Okay, first of all, getting 10 more wins is just this easy. All right, and I stand on tree branches alone. So if you disagree, then you say that. You don't have to agree. But I don't know what this man has against Terrence Mann, but I promise you, 10 more wins on the schedule. I guarantee it. If you play Terrence Mann minute for minute with the Jamal Murrays, the SGAs, the Lucas, the Kyries, the Trae Youngs, the Danes, do not take that man off the damn court until they leave the court. And it's the same philosophy, right, that other teams actually use when facing Kawhi Leonard. But Ty refuses to do that. He loves too much offense, and that's my biggest critique of him. That was my biggest worry, Law, even to the people on this panel, all year long. I said y'all's biggest hope in the playoffs, if y'all want to beat the Clippers, speaking to the Clipper haters that come on here, y'all better hope Ty Lue chooses to play offense, which he's prone to do. He loves playing that 3-4 guard lineup, which is detrimental. If he would just stick Terrence Mann, and by the way, speaking of that, Terrence Mann has been the best defender in this playoffs. I know it's only one round, but that's all I can judge. He has been the best defender in this playoffs, not only on Luka, but he was the best lockdown defender in this playoffs that I have seen yet. Jaden McDaniels got demoted. They put Ant-Man on the man because Jaden wasn't cutting the mustard, which I actually thought he would, right? But Terrence Mann, if he just plays 35 to 40 minutes long and don't come off the damn stars, because a lot of times you watch Terrence Mann, Kawhi, Paul George go to the court, Law, you look up and you're like, this is kind of interesting. Why is Joker and Jamal Murray still on the court and all our defenders on the bench? This don't smell too. That's my biggest critique of him, and I'm gonna back it up by this. JM was one of the ones that always said Ty loves to play the veterans too much, which kind of goes with what I'm saying. Amir Coffey, he gets put in the starting lineup, right? I think it was Kawhi or Paul George was out. This man leads the team in scoring. He has 17 points at halftime. Law, that man finished that game, and anything I tell you can be Googled. The man finished this game with 20 minutes played in the whole game. He's not a weak defender, so you can't blame it on that. You can't say he wasn't shooting the ball. He led the team in scoring at halftime. You had no reason, and the only reason I brought that up is to back up the thing. He refuses to let these young guys eat when they are eating, and you can reference that on the third backup to back up my notion all the way back. Was it Law 2022 when all the guys were hurt, and he starts Terrence Mann and Coffey and a lot of the guys, and they start just putting up like 30-point games. Like, they can produce.
He just falls in love with the Westbrooks, the Powells, the James Harden, the Reggie Jacksons, the Marcus Morris. He loves scoring too much. But you give me your feedback on how you feel. If Terrence Mann, in my opinion, plays 35 to 40 minutes, he don't leave until the star leave. I don't care if the star plays 46 minutes. He plays 46. That right there alone makes the team better going into any season, this year or last.
Yeah, my thing with T-Man, for one, I think T-Man did a nice job just taking on a starting role, period, for the first time in his career. So it's something that I thought needed to happen at the end of last season, not at the position everyone thought it should have been at, because I know a lot of people didn't want Russ to be in the starting lineup. I wasn't one of those people. I thought Terrence needed to take one of those spots next to Russ, next to PG, Kawhi, and Zoo. That's actually what happened. It's just that T-Man got hurt, and you never really saw that lineup to start the year, because by the time he got healthy, James was on the team. And then obviously Terrence needed to get that shooting back together. Terrence didn't shoot well at all when he got back from injury. It took him until January to shoot the way that we know he's capable of. And then from that point on, he was off to a pretty good rest of the year. Terrence's biggest, I think the biggest fallacy there, I don't want to call it that, but like, I'm lacking words. I've been on for almost 2 hours. But I think the biggest challenge for Terrence is, and you saw this in the playoffs, Terrence is much more appropriate for guarding Luka Doncic-sized players than the players that he was tasked with guarding to make that starting lineup work. And that's just what it is. Like, Terrence is not the best player to have guard the smaller guards in the league that can get buckets. That was a challenge for him. But if he plays up a position, if he's guarding the guys that are built like he is, if he's guarding the small forwards, if he's like, Terrence is a guy who's much more effective guarding up than he is guarding down. He's so much better when he can be physical, and you can be physical with Luka Doncic. That's why Luka was so inefficient in that series. Now, because he's Luka, he still figured some things out. We saw in Game 5, while everybody else was kind of struggling a bit. Kyrie was struggling, PG was struggling. Man, I'll tell you what, like, obviously James was really good the first 4 games of that series, and then Game 5, he had nothing left. While everyone was struggling, Luka just destroyed, everybody. And but for the most part, we saw like Terrence was really effective defensively. There's a lot of guys, man. It's a lot of guys. And again, like, we're getting to the point where we're nitpicking. The best thing that Terrence can do to help the Clippers next season, honestly, is to just want that ball all the time, but also to be disciplined. There are times where T-Man was going to play more, but then he'll pick up the early fouls and you wind up having to sit him. And so I thought Terrence Mann had a really good year. I thought Terrence justified why he needed to be a part of what the Clippers had. He wound up playing 30 minutes a game in the playoffs, because he needed to be tethered to Luka Doncic. But I think that there's a lot of things that you can say about T. Lue. I'm not going to go too deep on his usage of Terrence. I thought that the fact that he was willing to commit to Terrence being a starter and playing him as much as he did on that particular kind of team, I thought that was good for T. Lue. I thought that was good for T-Man. And we're going to be right back next year to see what the heck they're going to line up like next season.
Yes, sir. Man, appreciate you, Sean. I'm gonna get on to old man real quick, and we're gonna get ready to close this out. Appreciate you coming on, my man.
Yeah. Appreciate y'all. Appreciate you, Law. Appreciate you, BJ. Shout out to old man. What's going on, man?
Salute BJ. Salute Mr. Law Murray, and salute Sean. My question is, I'm not a big Ty Lue fan. But my question is, I may have 2 questions. I believe in a roster reset, especially with the starting 5. You name starting 5 that you liked, I believe, and it was similar to what I like. But do you feel that we need a power forward in order for Kawhi to be back in his original position, which would take a lot of stress playing that type of position he'd been playing off of his legs so that he can make it to the ultimate goal? And do you believe that we need a big man that can score down in the block or in the paint more so than having to have someone throw him an alley-oop or do a pick and roll, which would take a lot of pressure off of the wings and spread the floor even more? And do you would you have a problem with James Harden not coming back? And those are my questions.
Oh man, let's answer it this way. When it comes to the four, I know Kawhi would like a four, but I don't look at the Clippers needing a starting power forward. I look at them needing a backup. I think that, I just feel like that starting lineup worked, and what you need is someone better than Amir and PJ as your backup forward or your backup forwards. And so when I look at what a team like Boston looks like, for example, like Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum are playing the same position that Paul George and Kawhi Leonard played this past year. Kristaps Porzingis is obviously a more talented player than Ivica Zubac, and this actually gets to your second question. But Ivica Zubac is one of the best players in the league at doing the things that you ask a big man to do. You talk about roll efficiency, you talk about post-ups, you talk about rim protection. Ivica Zubac is one of the best players in the league at all three of those things, especially the rim protection. Do the Clippers need a player to replace Ivica Zubac? No. I expect Zoo to get extended. So that's where I'm looking at the center position and the power forward position. Can you find a player who is any place where they fit the roster from the constraints contractual wise, but can play either the 4 or the 5 and give your team diversity and to be able to guard? It is really hard to find that player. I'm describing a player that I don't know if that player exists, but that's the kind of player that they need. It's not as much, do you need a starter? Like, I know all the concerns about Kawhi's knee and everything, but shit, it's Paul George too. Like, Paul George has asked to not have certain assignments, to preserve him. And so, like, the question, of course, then comes to, can you have two guys like that need so much help around him at this stage of their careers? That's a question that we're going to ask if Paul George does come back. Obviously, if Paul George doesn't come back, the simple solution is, okay, just find someone to start at the 4. And so that's going to be tough. But I'm looking at the roster depth, bolstering the depth at the 4 and the 5. Can you get upgrades there? Can you get guys who can play? But most important, can you get guys who can guard, who can help protect the rim a little bit, who can rebound? In the second unit, I actually feel like the first unit defense and the first unit rebounding was fair at the very least. It was definitely good enough to support how good that offense was. Your problems start when you started to bring the backups in, when you started bringing the second unit in. As good as Amir Coffey was relative to expectations, Amir is like best suited to be your 10th guy. And he was more like your 7th or 8th guy, depending on how Russell Westbrook was being used. That's a place where it's like, that guys like PJ Tucker, Mason after his injury, Daniel Tice, as good as Daniel was at filling the role, like we knew what Daniel Tice's deficiencies were. Like, Daniel's not a presence in the paint really on either end of the floor. Having a player like that does wonders. If you're Boston, why is Boston so good? It's because Al Horford, a guy who is starting forever, came off the bench to play the backup forward position for them. What do I mean by backup 4? Even though he plays a lot of center, you can put Al Horford on the floor next to Kristaps Porzingis, and that dude can rebound and defend and space the floor and still be a presence inside for the few times that you need him to do that, even though that team plays a lot of 5-out basketballs to accentuate what Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown do. The Clippers didn't have Al Horford. They had PJ Tucker. So that's the upgrades that you look for. And then that all comes back to your last question. what happens with James Harden? I keep telling people I don't expect James to leave. Like, I don't expect any drama there. I don't know what the contract looks like. I just feel like when they get down to talking about the contract, it's going to be more about what do you guys need to make this work? Not I'm going to leave. I'm going to go somewhere else. So if James doesn't come back, then here's your situation. You're just the same Clippers team that you were before you got there, before Russ got there. Because again, I don't know what happens with Russ either. I don't know what the role is going to be. I don't know what the front office appetite would be for kind of, saying we're just going to run it back with Russ as a starter. I just don't think any of those cases are likely. What is likely is that James is going to be back. What I think should happen is that you got to reduce James Harden's workload. You can't have him playing 35 minutes a game, but he's a really important piece to how the Clippers got through offensively. Defensively, again, the starting lineup isn't what I think the issue is. I think it's the second unit and not the second unit guards. Norm did a good job defensively this year in ways that he didn't in years past. And Russ was their best defender as far as the guard position. They will miss Russ if he leaves. Your upgrades need to come from the reserve 4 and 5 spots. That's where we should judge where the Clippers' opportunities to be better are. They need to get younger and better at those spots in particular.
Okay. One more question, BJ. As far as Kawhi minutes, do you feel that he played a lot of minutes, especially going into the second half of the season? And how many minutes you think he should be playing a game?
Kawhi's an all-NBA guy. I think that's one of those things where you got to trust your medical staff about, what's smart going into the year. Before the year started, I wrote a whole story about 30-minute players because I think people think that there are certain guys that they should just play 30 minutes just because, like, all season long, not just in terms of the regular season, but the playoffs as well, right? And so if you're a star player, there's only 3 guys per team on average that play 30 minutes a game. I don't even think there were 100 guys this past year in the NBA that played 30 minutes a game. And so you got to think about that. It's like 30 minutes a game is reserved for elite players. And Kawhi is an elite player. He's got to be a guy who can handle 30 minutes a game. Otherwise, that's too much time to expose your team when you're not really that kind of a team. And so should Kawhi play a career high like he did this year? Absolutely not. But that's really the range that you got to kind of expect him to be at. You got to expect him to be, playing at least 30 minutes, probably not more than 35. 30 to 35 sounds about right. Just you got to get the rest of the team. It's who those minutes come with, and I think that's where you're going to look at.
Okay. Well, I appreciate your time, sir. I really appreciate
the
show and everything. BJ, thanks for giving me an opportunity to ask some questions. And you all take care.
Oh, man, appreciate you, brother. All right, it's going to be the last one, and we're going to close it out. Got my man Monty. Obviously, Law, you can see who he supports on the team more than anybody, but he is a Clipper fan through and through. What's good, Monty?
What's up, BJ? What's up, Mr. Lord? How y'all doing? Mr. Lord, I know you gotta get up out of here, so I just want keep it short and sweet. I'm probably one of the realest people on the panel, so I'm just gonna get straight to it. So let me ask you this, right? With the team that we had last year and the team that I'm hoping we bring back, does this team give us a best chance to win right now? And I'm gonna ask you a second question.
Yeah, I'm going to keep that short and sweet. Like, the team that you saw this past year was a damn good basketball team, especially once they figured out how they needed to line up. And so that's what everybody's betting on as far as the front office is concerned, as far as the coaching staff is concerned. Like, get that group together, upgrade the backup 4 or 5, and see what it's looking like in the West. That's their best chance of being a good team next year. Maybe a great team, but certainly a good team.
Yeah, I definitely I agree with that. And then my second question is, right, so do you believe that even though I know we got a lot of people under contract, I was looking at the contracts earlier, actually, and how PG and Kawhi, how they're making. Do you agree that we need, because a lot of people are saying, right, that we need to break up the team, we need to play more of the young guys. Do you feel like we have to equip guys to play right now to help win a championship?
No, no.
And that's my point. Thank you. That's all I wanted to know, Mr. Murray, because a
You
lot of
want to
people
you
say,
want to celebrate winning 40 games? That's what you do. Hey,
hey,
we
thank
won
you.
40 games this year because our late second round picks got to play. Like that's what you're saying basically.
Yeah. So I just think we need a better personnel. You agree that we need a better personnel to build around Kawhi, Paul George, Russ, and James Harden.
Yeah, I keep saying, the 4 or 5s and whatnot. It's like the backup 4 or 5 because there's not a lot of positions that you look at and be like, man, the Clippers need to get better at. It's like, dog, look, if James Harden is your starting point guard next year, you have an above average starting point guard. If Terrence is your starting 2 next year, then you have a guy who offensively plays outstanding basketball for a guy you really don't have touching the basketball. Um, you know, Kawhi is literally an all NBA player. Paul's an all-star. And Zoo, we've already said, as far as what you ask for a role playing big, Zoo
Mm-hmm.
is as good as you can get it. Russell Westbrook is a change of pace guy and a guy who defends at a high level even at this stage of his career. If he is cool with playing that role next year, and he wrote that he was, we know things, contracts get tricky and things can always change. But if Russ is on the team next year, I guarantee you he's going to be in a better place about what he's got to do than he was this past year. Norman Powell literally was a top 5-6 man. He wasn't a finalist, but we all know how good Norm was, what he did for second units, and what he did when he replaced Terrence Mann in those lineups with the rest of the starters. Like, Norman was really good. Amir Coffey is better suited to be like your 10th guy. But if your 10th guy is Amir Coffey, a guy who you don't rely on to play every night, but when he plays, you know what you're getting. He obviously knows what he's doing. He's a high floor player, even if he's not necessarily a high ceiling player. You just got to improve that at the back of 4 and a 5. You got to get younger there, but not so young that you're wasting time on guys who need to figure out the NBA. Like, guys
Right.
get their trials by fires. You need a guy in their 20s who
Mm-hmm.
doesn't need to be developed, guys who are ready to play, even if they're not the most talented guys. A Jalen Smith, a Obi Toppin. I'm throwing out names that I don't want y'all to hold me to, but I'm just describing them as the kind of players that the Clippers need to call themselves a better roster next year. It's not much. I'm not going out here saying they need to get Julius Randle. You're not going to hear me say that because if Julius Randle's on this team, we got to have some conversations about how that changes the complexion of the team. If you want to keep the complexion of a good team and improve around the margins, you're not that far away. A team with 50 wins is literally in the NBA Finals this year. A team that won the same amount of games as the Clippers did made the NBA Finals last year. A team that won 53 games won the NBA Finals last year. It ain't about that. So you only need to improve 2 spots. I've identified what those spots are. Let's see what they do. And you know what? Those spots might be guys already on the team. It might be Kai Jones. Kai Jones could be this year's Isaiah Hartenstein. I'm not talking about the same kind of player, obviously, but the same kind of situation. It could be Kai Jones. It could be Kobe Brown. Kobe Brown got his ass kicked as a rookie, but he might be ready to dish that ass whipping back out as a year 2 player.
Right.
It could be Jordan Miller. It could be Brandon Boston. It could be someone that's not on the roster. So, there are opportunities for young guys. There are opportunities for the Clippers to bring in guys from across the league, whether it's trade or free agency, and improve the team. Let's see how they do it.
Nah, I definitely agree with you. I don't want to hold you up too long because I know you gotta get out of here. But I definitely thank you. I just wanted to, get that understood. I appreciate you, Mr. Law. But I do think they need to give my boy Russ some credit. I do think he'll push the pace a little more than what we was playing. I think we played a little bit slow when Russ wasn't in the game.
They play slow, but you know what? I'll say this. It's the same point I made about ISO ball. Everybody says at the beginning of a year or at the beginning of a game. We want to play fast. We want to play fast. And what happens in the fourth quarter? What happens in the playoffs?
It
Them
slow.
motherfuckers,
You right.
they,
You right.
you
It
damn
slows
right.
down.
You're like,
You right. It
hold on.
slows down.
We might want to value these possessions a little bit. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So,
Right. So I
that's
understand.
why I say change of pace. You want to bring guys in and you want to change the pace, right? But
Mm,
if you're going to play slow, you want to do what? You want to play under control. You want to get the best shots. You want to make those shots consistently. You want to be able to say that if we're going to play at any pace, whether it's fast, whether it's slow, that you are controlling the game, that you are basically saying, like, you're going to play how we play, and we're going to do better at it than you will. There are some of
right.
these teams that will run around with their heads cut off, and when that game slows down, they don't know what the hell to do. The Clippers
Right.
weren't a team like that, and you know what? Neither were the Celtics, and neither were the Mavericks. And
Mm,
you're going to see a lot of slow-paced basketball in this finals. You're going to see guys situationally run because Kyrie Irving, a change-of-pace guy, but Dallas Mavericks ain't a Kyrie Irving offense. They're a Luka Doncic offense. We know how he operates. The Boston Celtics, anytime they get a stop, they're going to be trying to run up. They're going to try and get transition threes. They're going to try and attack teams when they're most disorganized. But when the game slows down, whose hands is the ball going to be in? Jason Tatum or
right.
Jaylen Brown. And they're going to ask
Mm,
those guys to make it work. That's going to be how the finals is decided. So you talk about all the things that you'd want to see out of a team. The Clippers have a lot of those things. They just need the basketball guys to smile on them a little bit.
I
Real.
appreciate you.
All right, Monty.
All right, BJ, man. Catch up with y'all, man.
Salute.
Salute.
Man. Well, I know we was on quite a bit. Had 2 hours in for you, man. Hope we didn't take too much of your time, man. But first off, we're gonna go and let you, get out of here. But shout out to where they can find you as far as your work on the Athletic, because Law, if y'all don't know, probably his stories, he doesn't really just, like you say, doesn't really blog. He actually writes. He takes time and sits down and actually writes out his columns and stories. So make sure y'all support him on that, because that does take a hell of a lot of time. I've done that a few times on, writing stories and stuff, and it's time consuming. So Law, I'll tell you where they can find you at, as far as where they can find your columns at.
Yeah, like I said, I'm at the Athletic. We got a great team over there. So shout out to everybody there. Shout out to everybody covering the finals in Boston and in Dallas. And I'm on the socials, and that's where I be. That's where I reside. So I appreciate, like I said, I appreciate everybody who engaged with me, but more importantly, like, I'm here to write, I'm here to report, and I've been here for a while and trying to keep that consistent. So if I get a little quiet, y'all understand we're gonna have a whole lot more to talk about as this month of June goes on.
All right, y'all. So I hope that y'all enjoyed the show. Like I said before, we're going to be bringing more and more interviews coming. This is one of the few, and one of hopefully of many later on down the line with us and Law Murray. And, obviously he's felt more comfortable seeing him at the games and stuff like that. And, if you guys have not already, make sure y'all like this video. This will be on YouTube. This will be on Twitter as well as Instagram. We have actually clips that we'll be clipping as well. So y'all make sure y'all follow us, continuously lock in. Hit that Cash App right there if you guys enjoyed the show. $ BJ Matthews. And anything else you want to say, Law, before you end it here?
Enjoy the finals, man. Enjoy the ISO ball heavy, 3-point heavy, slow-paced NBA finals.
All right, y'all. Salute, man. See y'all next time. Pull up a seat, pull up a chair, pull up. Peace.